People think lake towns stay peaceful, but they don't see what happens when one neighbor decides your land belongs to her eyes. The morning it all started, I stepped onto my porch with my father's old mug in my hand and felt a punch in my chest. My grandfather's hedge line, the one he planted before I was even born, was gone, not trimmed. Not shaped, gone. Stumps, splinters, and raw earth. For 5 full seconds, I couldn't move. The lake breeze felt different, like it was blowing through a wound instead of a yard. My internal thought kicked in. Who would do this, and why when I wasn't home? My name is Mark Halstead, and I live on a quiet stretch of Cedar Brook Lake. At least, it used to be quiet. I spent the past 2 weeks visiting my cousin on a ranch up in Wyoming, trying to reset after a stressful year. I came home expecting a quiet morning, my cedar fence, that old willow line, and maybe a walk to the dock. Instead, the moment I parked my truck, the sunlight sliced straight across the yard like a spotlight. My grandfather's hedge had always softened that light. Now everything looked exposed and foreign. I walked toward the stumps, the gravel under my boots crunching louder than usual. Sap still glistened on the cuts. I knelt down, ran my hand across one stump, and felt heat, meaning the trees had been cut recently. My stomach tightened. Someone waited for me to leave. That's when she walked out, Margaret Boone, our HOA president. The type of woman who talks through a smile that never reaches her eyes. She lived 2 houses down but acted like she owned the entire lake. Her jaw was tight, shoulders pulled back like she'd won something. She said, "Mark, this had to be done. Your hedge violated Section 9B. You didn't respond to the notice." Her voice carried the same tone a dentist uses before drilling. I asked what notice. She shrugged. "We sent one. Actually, the strange thing? My mailbox had been empty when I grabbed the week's mail off the counter inside. No warnings. No citations. Just regular ads in a fishing catalog," I said. "You cut down trees that have been here since before this HOA existed." Her smile sharpened. "Not my problem. They blocked community sightlines. And the fine is already processed." Fine. That word landed heavier than the morning sun. "How much?" I asked. $1,500, she said breezily. "Unless you pay late, then it doubles." My internal thought erupted. She wanted this. She waited for this. I turned toward the lake. Without the hedge, Margaret had a flawless view of the water from her back windows. A view she'd complained about since the day she moved in. A view my grandfather's hedge had ruined, according to her first HOA letter years ago. I whispered, this wasn't enforcement. This was personal. Margaret was already walking away, her heels tapping sharp against the walkway. I pulled out my phone. Before calling anyone, I checked the porch camera my father installed it 15 years ago, and it never failed. I opened the recordings. There it was. For mornings prior, 6:12 a.m. Margaret. Bathrobe. Pointing at my hedge, while a landscaping crew revved up chainsaws. No permits. No paperwork. Just a woman tearing through someone else's legacy. My chest heated. She knew I was out of town. I called the only person who handled land disputes in 3 counties, my old friend and attorney, Dean Walker. He picked up on the second ring. "Dean," I said, "I think my HOA president just committed the biggest mistake of her life." He asked me for documents, lot lines, zoning classification, old subdivision maps. I promised to dig everything out of the storage boxes my grandfather left behind before hanging up. Dean said something that stuck with me. If she touched land outside their jurisdiction, the HOA is in trouble. She's in trouble. The word jurisdiction lit a fuse in my head. I went inside, pulled out my grandfather's old metal filing chest, and spread maps across the dining table. They smelled like dust and cedar. The original deed from 1964 was still inside. According to it, my property straddled 2 classifications. The house sat in the HOA's boundary. but the entire hedge line rested on my family's older, agricultural-zoned parcel, meaning the HOA never had the right to touch a single leaf, not one. My internal thought: she cut trees she had zero authority over. The more I processed it, the angrier I felt, not loud anger. The quiet, focused kind my grandfather used to call thinking heat always said, "Don't swing first. Build first. You win more." With calm preparation than loud fists. My grandfather, I stepped outside again. The lake rippled softly. Even the birds seemed confused, circling where branches used to be. The loss hit deeper than property. It felt like someone ripped out part of my family history. Margaret underestimated the wrong. Neighbor, I decided I wasn't reacting out of emotion. I would respond legally, strategically, and precisely. My grandfather's style. A shadow moved on the sidewalk. It was my older neighbor, Ray Dalmont. Vietnam vet. Keeps to himself, but always sees everything. He said quietly, "Mark, I saw what happened." He stepped closer. "She waited for you to leave. Crews showed up before sunrise. She told them it was all approved." His eyes narrowed. "Except it wasn't. I asked if he'd give a statement." He nodded slowly. "I'll sign it." The lake wind shifted. The screen door behind me clicked softly, a sound that always meant a storm was coming. Even on a clear day, I spent the next hours gathering proof, photographing stumps, recording measurements, and reviewing old maps. Every detail mattered, and then I noticed something else. Something I almost missed. The HOA boundary stake painted red was 25 feet away from the hedge, meaning the destroyed trees weren't just possibly outside. HOA power. They were absolutely outside it. My internal thought locked in. I'm going to rebuild my grandfather's view, and she's going to regret touching it. By sunset, my plan was already forming. Next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I wanted to, but because the empty space where my grandfather's hedge once stood almost felt like a noise. The wind came straight through now, whistling against my cedar fence in a way I had never heard before. I stood on the porch with my father's chipped mug and thought, this isn't just damage. This is an invitation to fight. I started the day the way a civil engineer handles chaos, by making order out of it. I laid out the old surveying maps, current parcel diagrams, HOA boundaries, zoning notes, and the more I studied them, the clearer everything became. The hedge wasn't borderline. It wasn't arguably shared. It wasn't ambiguous. It was 23 feet outside the HOA line, on family land that existed long before anyone invented a decorative sightline regulation. I whispered, "Margaret, you cut the wrong tree." Dean called at 8:15 a.m. He sounded more awake than a lawyer should that early. "I read everything," he said. "Mark, she didn't just cross a line. She leaped over it." My internal thought surged. "Good. Let's make sure she never gets to leap again." Dean asked me to gather 3 things: photos of every stump, a time-stamped diagram of the hedge location, any witness statements I already had, Ray's testimony ready. He stopped by again that morning, holding a folded sheet of paper like it was a confession. He said, "Mark, I wrote everything I saw. Signed it too." His eyes flicked toward Margaret's house. "She's been watching your place for weeks." I felt a pulse of anger, quiet but sharp. Around 10 a.m., Margaret walked right up to my driveway like she owned it. Her posture was stiff, chin tilted up, lips pinched, a woman preparing to deliver judgment. "Mark," she started, "you need to acknowledge the fine." "Ignoring the HOA's decisions doesn't make them go away," I replied. "Neither does pretending you have authority you don't." Her eyelids fluttered fast, agitated. A tell she probably didn't know she had. She said, "Your hedge blocked community value." I acted within my rights. I stepped aside, pointed at the dirt line where my grandfather's roots once lived. "This isn't HOA land," she scoffed. "That's not for you to decide. It's already decided," I said calmly. The county decided it in 1964. Her jaw shifted left. Then, right like she was chewing anger, she snapped. If you don't comply, the board will escalate. I said, good, I'm counting on it. She didn't understand what that meant, but she would. She spun around and walked away, heels stabbing the pavement like tiny declarations of war. My internal thought, keep going, Margaret. Every step you take digs your own hole. By noon, I dug deeper. I filed a formal financial request under state homeowner law, the same law. Margaret pretended didn't apply to her. I wanted every dollar the HOA spent in the last year. If she cut my hedge using HOA money, that wasn't just trespass. It was misappropriation, the kind of thing prosecutors enjoy. Dean texted. If she used HOA funds. She's done, I responded. I'm betting she did. While waiting for the documents, I drove to the county planning office. A woman named Cheryl, gray hair, glasses on a floral chain, looked through the zoning system with the kind of patience only decades of government work can produce. After 5 minutes, she turned the screen toward me. There, she said. Your AR parcel is fully exempt from HOA aesthetics or vegetation rules. Her voice was slow, but absolute. No permit needed for accessory structures. Up to 1,200 square feet total. Shipping containers included. Shipping containers. The idea clicked so hard in my mind it felt like someone flicked on a light switch. I asked Cheryl to email me the official zoning confirmation. She said, give me 10 minutes. I stepped outside, staring at the lake. Wind rippled it in long strokes. A thought settled. If Margaret wanted a view, I'll give her one she'll never forget. The dock ropes clinked softly against their posts. A duck skimmed across the shallows. Somewhere behind me, a screen door slammed someone's kid running out to play. Life moved normally. Except for the storm building in my yard, when I got home, Margaret had left something taped to my door. A bright orange envelope. HOA fine. Now raised to $2,000. Not only that, a threat underneath. If unpaid in 14 days, they would file a lien. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because she didn't realize what she'd just done. The paper trail was my weapon. Every escalation tightened the trap around her. My internal thought? Good. Keep stacking evidence for me. At 4:40 p.m., Ray tapped on my fence. He held a pair of binoculars. She's got someone watching your place, he said. Dark blue sedan. Seen him twice. Same guy. A private investigator. Of course she would. Fear? No. Fuel. I thanked Ray and documented everything. My engineer's brain was fully online now. That evening, the HOA financial records arrived. Thick packet. Too thick. I opened it on my porch table. And there it was. A $3,900 payment to a landscaping company, filed under general maintenance. Date. The exact morning my hedge disappeared. My chest tightened with a strange mix of triumph and disbelief. She used HOA funds to destroy private property. Not just unethical criminal. Margaret wasn't running an HOA. She was running her own. Vanity project. I organized everything into a binder. Maps, stump photos. Ray's signed statement. Zoning email. Camera screenshots. Financial proof. Each piece, a nail in the coffin. By sunset, I had one last task. I called a company 15 miles outside town, Rust Ridge Storage, a place that sold old containers retired from freight lines. The owner answered with a gravelly voice. Yeah, what are you looking for? I said, do you have any shipping containers? The ugly ones. The rusted ones. Nobody wants. He chuckled. Plenty. How many you need? 3, I said. 40-footers. Paused. You building something? Something, I said softly. Something very legal. Delivery was set for Saturday morning. 8 o'clock, A.M. right when the HOA's quarterly meeting would be starting. I ended the day on my porch. Coffee mug. Bare yard. Empty horizon. But inside my chest, calm fire. Margaret wanted a view so badly, she broke the law to get it. Saturday morning arrived, crisp and clear, the kind of morning where the lake looks like it's holding its breath. I was on my porch at 7-30 a.m., Father's old mug warming my hands, when the sound hit first deep, thunderous, mechanical. A freight truck. Right on schedule, it rolled down Cedarbrook Lane slowly, pulling all eyes with it. And the moment it turned onto my property, neighbors started stepping onto porches like prairie dogs rising from the grass. 3 massive rust-scarred shipping containers sat chained on the flatbed, each one looking like it had crossed oceans, wars, and storms. Exactly what I wanted. The driver hopped out, a guy built like a refrigerator, beard down to his chest. You, Mark? Yeah, you weren't kidding about wanting the worst-looking ones. That's the point, I said. We walked to the orange boundary stakes the surveyor placed earlier. These go here, I told him, pointing at the exact line that blocked Margaret's lake view with laser precision. He grinned. Let the show begin. He started unloading. Each container dropped with a booming metal thud that shook the ground and created a kind of echo that bounced off the lake. Neighbors gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "Can he do that?" I didn't look at them. I looked at her. Margaret, she stormed out of her house wearing a satin robe. Fury turning her face the shade of uncooked salmon. Her eyes were wide and darting. Her footsteps were sharp and fast, like she was trying to stab the earth. She shouted, "Mark, what do you think you're doing?" I answered calmly, building on my own land. She pointed at the containers with a shaking hand. This is illegal. This is retaliation. This violates every HOA standard. Her voice cracked on the last word. I handed her the county's determination letter. Not on a 9-land land, I said. And this isn't your jurisdiction. She scanned the first paragraph, and I watched the panic crawl up her throat. Her eyelashes fluttered rapidly, the same tell from our last. Confrontation, antagonist psychology, fear trying to wear the mask of authority. And failing, the crowd around us thickened. People recording, people whispering, people enjoying the show more than they wanted to admit. I held up the second packet, the financial documents. This, I said, is the $3,900 HOA money you spent cutting my trees? Without authorization? She froze, then shook her head a little too fast. That expense was approved. All of it was approved. Her voice didn't match her words. She didn't sound confident. She sounded cornered. Ray stepped forward. I saw everything. I signed a statement. You lied to that landscaping crew about permits? Margaret spun toward him. You stay out of this, Raymond. Her voice cracked again. Someone in the crowd muttered, "This is bad." Then a black and white police cruiser pulled up. Deputy Morgana Tall, middle-aged officer who had the posture of a man who'd broken up enough HOA fights to earn a medal, stepped out. Margaret rushed toward him. Officer, arrest him. He's building illegal structures. Her voice was hysterical now, the kind of tone a panicked kid uses when they know they're guilty but trying to spin the story. Morgan raised a hand. Ma'am, slow down. I handed him the binder survey, zoning confirmation, photos, timestamps, video stills. He flipped through it all, scanning with practiced calm. When he finished, he looked at Margaret. There's no violation here. Containers are legal under county code. Margaret blinked hard. But, this is disruptive. It blocks the view. Morgan's expression didn't change. Not a legal reason to stop it. Her face twisted like a coiled spring being over-cranked. Then came the moment everything flipped. The HOA treasurer, Mrs. Limley, stepped forward holding a tablet. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with righteous anger. Officer, she said, Margaret has been approving expenses without board vote, landscaping, legal consultations, personal property improvements. The crowd murmured low, shocked. Electric. Mrs. Lindley turned the screen so Morgan could see. These charges total over $14,000, all unauthorized. Margaret shook her head violently. Those were community needs. No, Lindley said sharply. You used HOA funds to cut down trees on land you don't even control. And you lied about board approval? Hush fell over the street. Morgan exhaled. Ma'am, this is now a criminal matter. I'll be forwarding all of this to the county investigator. Margaret's knees wobbled. Her mouth opened, closed. Opened again. Her psychology was unraveling in real time. A woman who built her entire identity on control, now losing it in front of her entire kingdom. I turned to the crowd. You all saw my hedge for years. It wasn't harming anyone. It wasn't blocking community property. It wasn't under HOA rules. I held up the printed still image of Margaret ordering the crew at dawn. This is what she did when I was away. Without jurisdiction, without authorization, without honesty, a man in the crowd said loudly. We need a recall election, another added. She lied to everyone. Someone else, get her out. Margaret's face went gray. She whispered, This isn't fair. Then louder, This isn't fair. Her voice cracked so violently that even the birds went silent. She turned and ran, literally ran, back to her house. I let the containers stand tall, orange rust glinting under the late morning sun. A wall, not of revenge, but of proof. Proof that boundaries matter. Proof that legacy matters. Proof that people who destroy out of entitlement should never win. 2 weeks later, the HOA held a special meeting. 80 households showed up. Margaret was removed from her position with overwhelming votes, and the county investigation. They found enough to charge her with trespass, destruction of property, and misused HOA funds. Her perfect Lakeview dream, gone? Her power? Gone. Her reputation? Dusted like my grandfather's fallen branches, the long game won. Always. I learned something standing on that porch weeks later, coffee mug in hand. People like Margaret think strength means shouting, controlling, pushing, cutting. But real strength is quiet, methodical, rooted, like my grandfather's trees once were. Justice doesn't rush, but it always arrives. If you've ever faced a neighbor who pushed too far, share your story in the comments. And if you want more HOA tales like this one, hit subscribe.